It began with a tremor barely perceptible, yet unmistakably foreign. At 2:17 a.m. local time, a seismic ripple tore through the outskirts of Tel Aviv, setting off alarms not just in Israel, but across the intelligence corridors of the world. Within minutes, satellite feeds lit up with infrared signatures no one could explain. What followed was chaos. A blinding explosion that shattered reinforced bunkers, vaporized steel, and left behind a crater so deep it disrupted underground fiber lines. The target? A covert Mossad facility, buried beneath layers of secrecy and concrete, housing over 3,000 personnel. Analysts, operatives, cyber warfare specialists, all gone. In one calculated strike, Iran had never claimed responsibility. Not officially, but the clues were too precise, too deliberate. The blast bore hallmarks of advanced thermobaric engineering, technology Iran had been rumored to possess but never deploy. Western analysts scrambled to decode the implications. Was this retaliation, a warning, or something far more strategic? The silence from Tehran was deafening, yet the message was clear. The balance of power had shifted. For decades, Mossad operated as a shadow empire, untouchable, omnipresent, feared. Their reach extended from Beirut to Buenos Aires. Their agents whispered about in war rooms and back alleys alike. But now, in a single night, that mythos had been shattered. The world watched as Israel reeled, not just from the loss of life, but from the psychological rupture. If Mossad could be hit this hard, this surgically, then no intelligence agency was truly safe. And in the shadows, Iran's silence spoke louder than any declaration. The aftermath was surreal. Emergency response teams, trained for conventional disasters, found themselves navigating a war zone of melted circuitry and pulverized concrete. The air reeked of scorched metal and ozone. Drones hovered overhead, capturing footage too classified for public release. Inside the crater, remnants of biometric scanners, encrypted servers, and tactical gear lay scattered like relics of a fallen empire. Survivors? None. Not a single distress signal, not a single heartbeat. The facility had been erased with surgical precision. Global intelligence networks went into overdrive. Washington, London, Berlin all demanded answers. But Israel, stunned and grieving, offered only silence. The names of the dead were never released. These weren't ordinary operatives. They were ghosts in the system, identities scrubbed from existence long before the blast. And now they were gone, 3,000 of the most elite minds in espionage, wiped out in a flash of engineered fury. Iran's fingerprints were everywhere, yet nowhere. The explosion's signature matched experimental designs leaked years ago from a Tehran lab. But no launch trajectory, no drone footage, no intercepted communications. It was as if the strike had materialized from thin air. Some speculated it was a cyber-triggered detonation, activated remotely through a breach in Mossad's own firewall. If true, it meant Iran had penetrated the very core of Israel's intelligence infrastructure, a feat previously thought impossible. And yet, Tehran remained silent. No gloating, no denial. Just a quiet confidence that unsettled even its fiercest critics. The geopolitical chessboard had been flipped. Allies whispered of retaliation. Enemies watched with awe. But beneath the surface, one truth echoed louder than any headline. The rules had changed. Intelligence warfare had entered a new era. One where shadows could bleed and silence could kill. In the intelligence community, silence is rarely passive. It's tactical. And Iran's refusal to acknowledge the strike sent ripples through every classified channel. Mossad's allies convened in encrypted briefings, dissecting the blast frame by frame. Theories emerged, each more unsettling than the last. Some believed it was an inside job, an Iranian double agent embedded deep within Mossad's ranks, feeding coordinates and access codes. Others pointed to quantum-level cyber intrusions, suggesting Iran had cracked encryption protocols once thought unbreakable. But the most chilling theory? That Mossad had grown complacent. For years, Israel's intelligence apparatus had operated with impunity, executing high-risk missions with surgical precision. Assassinations, sabotage, surveillance, Mossad was the gold standard. But power breeds vulnerability. The agency's reliance on centralized data hubs, its confidence in biometric security, its assumption of superiority, all had become liabilities. Iran, long underestimated, had exploited every blind spot. And while the West scrambled to recalibrate, Iran remained composed.
No pedrads, no propaganda.
Just quiet recalibration. In Tehran's underground bunkers, analysts monitored global reactions, noting every shift in posture, every recalculated alliance. The strike wasn't just tactical, it was psychological. It forced adversaries to question their own defenses, their own assumptions. If Mossad could fall, who was next? Meanwhile, in Israel, grief turned to resolve. The crater became a symbol, not of defeat, but of rebirth. A new generation of operatives was being trained, forged in the fire of loss. But the scars ran deep. Trust had been shattered, protocols rewritten, and in the silence that followed, one truth lingered. Iran had rewritten the rules of engagement, not with declarations, but with devastation, not with armies, but with algorithms. The ripple effects of the explosion weren't confined to Israel. In Langley, Virginia, CIA analysts stared at screens with expressions that hadn't been seen since 9/11. In Moscow, the SVR quietly upgraded its threat matrix. Beijing's Ministry of State Security launched an internal audit of its own subterranean facilities. The message was universal. No one was untouchable anymore. Intelligence warfare had crossed a threshold, and Iran had drawn the line in fire. But beneath the surface, something more complex was brewing. Iran's silence wasn't just strategic, it was psychological warfare. By refusing to claim responsibility, Tehran forced the world to fill in the blanks. Every theory, every whisper, every leaked memo only amplified their mystique. It was a masterclass in narrative control. And while Mossad scrambled to rebuild, Iran's operatives moved like shadows, exploiting the confusion, gathering intel, and watching the world recalibrate. In diplomatic circles, the explosion became a litmus test. Nations were forced to choose sides, not publicly, but in policy, in posture, in whispers behind closed doors. Some saw Iran as reckless, a rogue actor playing with fire. Others saw brilliance, a nation long cornered now rewriting the rules with precision and restraint. The debate raged, but the facts remained. 3,000 Mossad personnel were gone, and no one could explain how. And then came the leaks, classified documents hinting at Mossad's vulnerabilities, intercepted communications suggesting prior warnings ignored. It painted a picture not just of a successful strike, but of systemic failure. Iran hadn't just detonated a bomb, they detonated doubt. And in the intelligence world, doubt is more lethal than any weapon. It corrodes trust, paralyzes action, and reshapes alliances. The crater in Tel Aviv was deep, but the psychological crater across the globe was deeper. Months passed, but the crater remained, a scar etched into the earth and into the psyche of global intelligence. Mossad, once the embodiment of stealth and supremacy, had become a cautionary tale. Training manuals were rewritten, protocols hardened, but the loss lingered, not just in Israel, but in every agency that had once looked to Mossad as the gold standard. The explosion had done more than kill, it had exposed. It revealed the fragility of systems built on secrecy, the arrogance of assuming invincibility. Iran, meanwhile, evolved. Quietly, strategically, their intelligence apparatus expanded, not with bravado, but with precision. They didn't need to claim the strike. The world had already done it for them. Their silence became legend. In the absence of proof, speculation became gospel. And in that ambiguity, Iran found power. They had weaponized uncertainty. In the halls of power, the event became a case study, not just in tactics, but in psychology. How a single act, executed with surgical silence, could reshape global dynamics. Mossad rebuilt, yes, but differently, cautiously. The myth of invulnerability had been shattered, and in its place grew a new doctrine, humility through loss. And yet, the question lingered. Was this truly Iran's doing? Or had another player, hidden deeper in the shadows, orchestrated the strike to shift the balance? Theories abounded, but answers remained elusive. That was the brilliance of the act. It left no fingerprints, only consequences. In the end, the crater became more than a wound. It became a mirror, reflecting the dangers of unchecked power, the cost of underestimating adversaries, and the new reality of intelligence warfare. A world where silence is strategy and shadows are no longer safe.